This video provides an overview of integrating HR service delivery on the ServiceNow platform with third-party background check systems. With the HR Integrations plugin, you can integrate HR service delivery with third-party background check systems that use SOAP or REST services. In Kingston, base integrations are provided for First Advantage, which uses SOAP services to request background checks through the First Advantage service. You can also integrate with other third-party background check systems. Here's what the process looks like. First, you provide the source credentials so that HR service delivery can access the external system. Second, you need to configure and/or verify the integration. Third, you add the background check packages. And finally, you can create cases to request background checks by the third-party system. Let's look at the first part of the process, providing the source credentials. We start by opening an existing source or creating a new source, where we provide information about the third-party system. When creating a new source, provide the name of the third-party background check system and make sure the active checkbox is selected. If you're using First Advantage, open the existing record to configure it. A source property and additional inputs are already set up for you. Here we enter the credentials for the SOAP services that we'll be using with the integration. First Advantage only uses SOAP services, so we configure them here. Other background check systems may use REST services, but we don't configure them here. We'll show you where to add them later when we configure the HR web services. Here's where you configure the source properties. First Advantage includes a debug property. You can activate or deactivate the available source properties as needed. For example, to enable the debug log, select True in the Value field. Some third-party systems require additional inputs, which you enter here. The First Advantage integration requires a parent account, and requester email address. Now let's take a look at the second part of the process, configuring the integration. You need to start with an HR service. For First Advantage, an HR service called Request Background Check by First Advantage is provided. For others, you need to create a new HR service. You must have the HR Core admin role to create or edit HR services. Next, you need to verify or configure the HR web services, which are the SOAP and/or REST messages used to communicate with the third-party system. Earlier in the video, we saw where to configure the SOAP credentials in the HR integration sources. If you're using REST services, you configure the REST credentials here when you create the REST message record. The next step is to verify or configure HR service mappings, which map the HR services to the appropriate HR web services. Here in the HR service mapping for First Advantage, the HR service Request Background Check by First Advantage is mapped to the First Advantage web service. Next, you need to verify or configure HR outbound schema mappings, which map the data fields from the HR source tables to the appropriate target fields in the third-party system. Here we can see all of the outbound schema mappings for First Advantage. The HR source tables are defined here, and the target fields are defined here in the target column. Next, you need to verify or configure HR schema mappings, which map the data fields from the third-party system to the appropriate fields in the HR staging tables. Here we can see that all the background check and drug screening fields provided by First Advantage are mapped to this background check staging table. Finally, you need to verify or configure the HR transform maps, which map the HR staging table to the appropriate HR target tables. In our example, the staging table is defined here in the source table field, and the target table, where the data is stored in the ServiceNow platform, is defined here. With the background check system integration configured, the last step is to add one or more background check packages to your instance. A background check package is a set of activities that are defined by the third-party system to be included in a background check, identified by the package ID here. ServiceNow uses this set of activities to execute the background check. In our example, we have one set up for background checks only, and one for combined background and drug checks, both through First Advantage. Now let's see how a case writer creates a case to request a background check for a prospective employee. For a background check, we always select HR Talent Management case for the COE, then select the specific HR service. When we create the case, we must select a background check package. Then we can click Ready for Work to send the background check request to the First Advantage service. All the details about the case updates will be pushed to ServiceNow from First Advantage. Here we can see that the status of the background check is Started, and the applicant we requested it for has been assigned an ID. ServiceNow then takes care of updating the case details. As we can see in this example, the background check is complete, the applicant passed, and here's the link to the background check details. Let's look at an overview of how the integration works to perform a background check. First, the HR agent creates a case to request the background check, and ServiceNow sends the request to the third-party system. That system evaluates the request, updates it with the applicant ID and status, and sends it back to ServiceNow. Then ServiceNow creates a task for the employee to sign up on the third-party site and sends an email with a link to the site's portal. The employee clicks the link in the email and completes the application on the site portal. The third-party system starts the background check and notifies ServiceNow that the check is in progress. When the background check is complete, the third-party system sends a notification to ServiceNow, and the record is updated to include the status of the background check and a link to the details. We saw how the HR case writer must specify a background check package after creating the HR case. You can set a default background check package for the HR service. To do this, you need to add a field with the default background check package value to the accompanying HR case template. Here's the one we want to configure. We add the background check package field to the form and select the default package. For our example, we select background check only. Here's a look at the same case we created earlier, but with a default background check package configured. When we create the case, the default background check package appears in the field, but we can select a different one. For more information, please consult our product documentation, knowledge base, or podcast, or ask a question in the ServiceNow community.